Hey there, today I want to talk to you guys about if you should start farming. And this is a big topic of discussion just because of all the stuff going on right now. Some people have more time on their hands than they're used to having and all that sort of stuff. So what I'm going to do today is I want to talk about my journey and how I ventured into farming, all the things that you might want to consider, and if jumping into farming is the right thing for you guys. So let's get into it. So if you're new to the channel and you haven't been following along, I just want to give you a little bit of an update here so you understand my journey and the context in which I'm talking from. I ran a small market garden out of my suburban property for about 2 years before shutting that down to run Raleigh City Farm, which is a nonprofit urban farm located in Raleigh, North Carolina. And when we moved to Raleigh about 5 years ago, one of our goals was to buy a house and to try to live a little bit more of a sustainable life. My wife and I both grew up in real urban areas, and so that was important to us. So in 2017, we started by getting some chickens, and just to give you an idea here, we're on a 2-acre lot here, so plenty of room for all sorts of outdoor activities. And we got some chickens, and we sort of got hooked into that whole thing and really started enjoying that, and eventually stumbled upon permaculture and market gardening and all those sorts of things. And over the winter of 2017 to 2018, I decided I wanted to grow some vegetables in the spring. So I did my research and I saw that the best vegetable growers, in my opinion, were the market gardeners. So what I did was I set up market garden beds, the standard 30-inch beds, and prepared the ground using chickens, and was ready to start growing a lot of vegetables in the spring of 2018. And once I started planting things out, I really didn't have a lot of experience growing food, or pretty much any experience growing food. I planted a lot of food. And I'm kind of the person that just likes to go all in with things, and that can be a problem sometimes too. But that is my personality, so I have to recognize that. So we started growing a bunch of food, and all of a sudden our friends were sort of interested in buying food from us because they didn't know any farmers, and they were like, hey, we buy a box of food from you every week. So that's sort of how it started. It was pretty casual. I was sort of in between careers and doing a lot of part-time work and handyman stuff and things like that. And so for me, it was kind of like an easy transition into like putting a little more time into it and trying to grow that. And very quickly, it sort of turned into a business in that, people wanted to buy veggies, and then I started treating it more like a business. So once I realized I'd be starting to sell vegetables, I realized, okay, we need a name for the farm. We need to start doing marketing, all that kind of stuff. So I started posting to Instagram really regularly and taking the marketing very seriously and trying to grow the company, really bootstrapping it. Really didn't spend a lot of money, but to start off with, I built a small high tunnel and 8 beds, and it was just a really cute little setup. But I did the standard market garden beds because that way I knew that all the tools would work, and then expansion was possible. I'll get more into that in a little bit. And just started growing food, and it was great. And so throughout 2018, I was just doing family deliveries. I called them greens boxes, and it was pretty cool. And started getting into more restaurants 2018, 2019, and started to expand the operation, and kept on growing and growing and growing. More and more beds, trying to get more customers, and trying to move into that sort of full-time farming mode. But at the same time, I started a YouTube channel, and that happened in the end of March in 2019. And so a lot of my time was sort of split. And this is definitely not a normal situation if you're getting into farming, for sure. But as a former educator, I taught high school math for 5 years. And so I really enjoy the education side of it. And if you've been following this channel, you obviously know that. So for me, at that point, when the farm started to grow in 2019 and I was trying to take on more customers and grow more food, I was also kind of split time between, YouTube and eventually doing work with no-till growers. And so for me, that was kind of a struggle with time management and trying to grow the farm as much as possible. But, at the end of 2019, I started talking with Raleigh City Farm about moving down there and spending a little bit less time farming and a little bit more time with the education side of things. All right, so that just gives you kind of a background of sort of my evolution into farming. And I kind of skipped the homesteading stage, and I think a lot of people do start with the homesteading stage. And I'm not here to make definitive definitions about these terms, but I kind of think of it in 3 ways. I think of homesteading, which you're kind of just growing food for your family, maybe a couple of friends, neighbors, that sort of stuff. And then farmsteading, which is when you have a homestead but you're selling some of your produce, but you're really not making the bulk of your money off of it. And then farming is like a full-on career. You're running a business and you're trying to make your income off of the farm. And I see those as 3 things, and there's nothing wrong with being in any 3 of those stages and going forwards and backwards. There's no problem with that. And there's nothing wrong with just homesteading. No, you don't have to start a homestead in the result of trying to start a farm. Do whatever makes sense for you and your family and what you enjoy doing. People always ask me where you start, and I think you can start wherever you want. There is no, set path, and I think everyone's personality is different, everyone's context is different, everyone's land accessibility is different, and everyone has different amounts of time. So I say the best thing to do is just start by growing food, do some homesteading, learn how to grow vegetables, learn how to grow a few vegetables, and start feeling comfortable with it. See if you actually like the lifestyle. You're very much tied to your house, your home, your property, and you have a lot of chores that you do on a day-to-day basis, and that's not for everybody, so it's best to just try that out first. But one thing I really want to say is if you have the inkling of trying to grow vegetables for a profit, I think one of the best things you can do is when you build your farm or build your beds, start by standardizing everything as much as possible. In the market garden world, beds are usually 30 inches wide and they're often 50 feet or 100 feet. So I highly recommend that when you build your beds, you build them in 50 or 100 feet lengths. Now, when you first start, 50 feet of lettuce or radish or carrots or whatever is going to be way too much. So feel free to split the bed in half or thirds or quarter. But I think if you're going to be into, the kind of market gardening that I'm into with the no-till and all that stuff, you don't want to be building your beds. You want to make permanent beds. So just set them up ahead of time. And the reason for that standardization is that things like drip tape and row cover and insect netting and high tunnels and all that stuff is all kind of standardized in the market garden world. And so the more you standardize it now, the better off you're going to be. I did a video of what I called flexiculture. I'll leave a link up here and down below for you guys to check out, which really talks about a lot of those things about standardization. But because you have that stuff standardized, when you're ready to push forward and grow more food, everything is already set up to do that. And really, when you're talking about growing more food, it's, generally when you're homesteading or you're growing vegetables at home, there's usually an abundance. There's always a time of year where you're like, hey, I have way too much squash, maybe that's you right now, or I have way too many carrots or way too much lettuce or whatever you're growing. And you have an abundance and you can either share that with people, you can barter with people, and then you might start thinking, okay, well, maybe I can start selling some of this stuff. And so that's where you start getting into that farmstead mode. But really, when you're trying to transition from more than homesteading, it's really just kind of scaling up and doing a little bit more, right? You're already planting, you're already doing all that stuff, but you just have to make sure you're set up to, to handle that. So you're thinking about going from homestead to farmstead or maybe right to farming, somewhere in there. What do you need to do? Well, you need to remember that when you're starting a farm is a business, and any business needs capital to start. I had a lot of people reach out to me and say, hey Josh, I got $2,000. What should I buy? What's the most important things I should buy to start my farm? And you have to remember that starting a business with $2,000, any kind of business, is going to be super hard or just even impossible. So you do need capital. Now, a lot of us, money's tight right now with everything that's going on, and what you can do, depending on your financial situation, if you have a partner that's got a job, or maybe you have a job that you have a little bit of extra free time, is start working in that farmstead category, right? Start selling some produce and taking that money and investing it into your farm. So every time you make money, buy an extra tool or buy a high tunnel or buy something else. And that way, when you're ready to make the leap, you have the infrastructure and you have the funding to start your business. Now, once you decide that you can start your business, or even before that, you need to do your market research. You need to know where you're going to be selling your food to, what the prices are like, what's your competition like, who are your clients, who are the people you're going to be buying food from you. All of that stuff's important to determine, can you make this work? If you start any business, you need to make a business plan or at least do market research and decide, how much money do I need to make this viable? And what that entails is like how many vegetables do you need to sell at what price? And then you got to realize, can I actually do that by myself? Do I need more help? Is this business going to work? Is it going to make you enough money for your family so that it actually works and that you're profiting from it? And so once you sort of do that exercise and you figure out, how many pounds of this and that, and you can figure out like how much you need to grow, then you can start thinking about how big your farm should be, and also, if it's going to be a viable, business for yourself. And if you can actually handle it. So if you go do all the calculations and you realize, oh, I'm in a really rural area, so I can't sell things like baby greens. So you have to grow more long-term crops, more, less crops like that, and then you realize, oh, I need an acre, I need 2 acres. Maybe you can't handle that yourself. You just don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're going to be unsuccessful. Some of the things you're going to need to invest in early are things like a good wash pack station and cold storage. And you want to make sure that when you do these investments, that you make sure they're large enough for what you need now and also what you need in the future. Because if you build out your cold storage and it's good for this year, well, what about year 2, 3, 4, and 5? Are you going to need like a one that's way bigger. So take your time and make sure you set stuff up so that you can grow into it. I think that's really, really important. The other thing you need to keep in mind is with marketing. You need to make sure that when you start your business, you are marketing your business, because you need to make sure you have customers. I think a lot of farmers, and this is like the hardest thing to talk to you guys about, is about the business side of it and marketing and sales, because everyone wants to focus out and nerd out about soil health, you know, crop varieties, tools, all that stuff. But the hardest thing to make your business sustainable is to make sure that you're making money. So make sure that you have a marketing plan. And if you don't know how to do that sort of stuff, make sure you find someone that can, so that you make sure that you get, you know, your produce sold and so that you're making money. So what are the hurdles here? Well, I think we hit on some of them before. Money, right? You need capital to get started. Time, right? You have to have time to be able to do this. And you have to remember that when you first get started farming, you're gonna be a really bad farmer. Even if you have a lot of gardening experience, you're gonna have crop failures. The weather is as unpredictable as ever, and so it's gonna be really challenging. Another thing is the knowledge and experience. It's one thing to go from gardening to, you know, producing a little extra food, to try to do this on scale, to do crop planning, and make sure you have the tools and the knowledge and expertise that you need. And I think that there's tons of great information online and in books. Like there's tons of videos on my channel. No-Till Growers is another great thing. There's tons of good stuff on there. There's also some great books. There's online classes. There's all sorts of cool stuff. And you have to find the sort of style of farming that resonates with you. And once you do that, then, you know, you can learn and grow. And, you know, but again, that takes a lot of time. The other thing you can do is spend a year or two working with other farmers, take an apprenticeship, volunteer if someone will allow you to do that. And try to visit farms and all that kind of stuff, so that you guys can learn what you want to do on your farm and how you can make it successful. The other thing to think about is land access. And I know that a lot of people don't have access to land because it's not financially viable for your current situation. Or you might be saying, hey, when we finally buy that land, then we can start a farm. Well, you know, you could always farm on someone else's land. There's always land around that people aren't using. Now, if you're urban, it's a little bit trickier, but you know, there's plenty of examples that people have farmed in other people's backyards. In rural areas, it's even more common to get into like land sharing and stuff like that. You'd be surprised. So if you are really motivated to start farming and you don't have access to land, don't make that an excuse. You can make it work. Farming is a super tough business to be in, and if any of you guys are in the industry, you guys know how tough it can be, but it can be very rewarding. And I think now is as good of a time as any to get into farming, especially small scale farming, because there's such a demand for local, healthy, and regenerative, sustainable foods. I know a lot of farmers here are just getting into it or getting rolling, and there's so much demand. If you hustle, you can make it for sure. Make sure that you do your research, as I said, and make sure that you learn how to do this. And if you can't volunteer or work on another farm, and you've gone through and watched as many videos and read as many books as possible, hire a consultant, get someone in there to help you get started so that you don't make serious mistakes moving forwards. Things can be very costly in the future if you don't take care of them right up front. But get started growing food, and don't think that you have to make that jump from for fun and for feeding your family from homesteading into a professional route. But I know a lot of people are thinking about that right now, especially with the economy and having a lot of time on their hands. So all things you should be thinking about here, guys, and hopefully this helps at least generate some discussion and make sure you guys are thinking really, thinking a lot about what you need to be doing now and what makes sense for you guys and your family. So thanks so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.